Good evening, St. Louis. Welcome to the Variety Sports Network. This is the 314 Sports Show. Look out for the new branding that's coming out. We're working on new designs. It's going to be fantastic. But
Yes.
wait for that. Make sure you see it when you see it. Don't get worried. We're still here. We're all the same. Just doing something a little more inclusive for the city. But with us tonight, special guest and friend of the network, Chris Gebhardt, is here to break down all of our city needs because we all know the truth that we're not the best soccer commentators. So we bring Chris in to cover our rear ends. Jordan is joining me tonight. You'll notice that our fearless leader, the Hefe, is off this evening because, he's getting ready to make his family a little bit bigger. So he may pop in the comments if he's got downtime. I don't know. I am Josh, co-host from Sunday Stretch, host of the Next Left Turn NASCAR on Sundays. But we're not here to talk about those things. We're here to talk about St. Louis City SC, the St. Louis Cardinals, and anything else that comes in the comment section about our St. Louis sports teams. Chris, it's been a rough season for City so far. We've had a lot of positive talk. You've educated us a ton this year, so we are a little bit more smarter or well-informed on the soccer side of things. But I know we've had some trades go on recently. Can you fill us in on the trades, what we're looking at with the talent coming in, the talent going out, and just kind of give us the rundown. Catch us up, man. It's been a while since you've been here.
Yeah, so it's been obviously a very busy middle of the season. I think one of the first times I was on, we talked about how the transfer windows work in soccer and how it's different. And it's kind of like a trade deadline, but it's not. And so for people who aren't super familiar with how transfers work or how the transfer window works, essentially you have the ability in MLS or in soccer to transfer players between leagues only during certain times of year. And so you have the ability to make trades, even if inside your league and with other leagues, and purchase players from overseas and send them overseas in the wintertime and in the summertime. And basically there's these two windows. And right now we're in the summer window, a summer transfer window, which means that although City had made some moves prior to the window, those players are not eligible to play for them until the window opens. And that's basically happened now, and which is why you've seen a few of their new players like Marcel Hartl, Cedric Toyert. Those two guys especially are probably the two biggest names that they've signed, both German Bundesliga 2 players coming over here. And along with some other guys, Simon Betcher, who was a SLU grad from Kansas, who played for the Whitecaps previously and was over in Europe. They got him on loan with an option to buy. So chances are they'll probably retain him next year and wind up purchasing his contract if he performs. And he's played well. He had a goal in their game over the weekend on Sunday. So, it's right now is a really busy time. They are trying to remake this roster on the fly. They sent out their vice captain, Tim Parker, who was one of the cornerstones of the team, one of the biggest pieces they had last year. They traded him for a younger defenseman, center back, who they feel is going to be more of a long-term option. And Henry Kessler is a guy who is under contract. Parker's contract was going to expire at the end of the year. He's a little bit older. Center backs, they can play until they're a little bit older, but depending on the style that you want to play, you might run into a situation where they just don't have the legs to run as much anymore, or the speed. And Parker's speed has started to become a bit of a factor. The interim coach right now for City, John Hackworth, is preferred to play 3 in the back instead of 4. So what that means is that it's a lot more running for those guys. They have to cover a lot more ground since there's 3 defenders instead of 4 in the back. And Parker was kind of showing some cracks a little bit defensively this year. And also the rumors were that his agent, his team, was pretty far apart with City on what they're looking for with the contract. And I think City said, we don't feel like he's worth it, or we want to get younger and faster, and we're not going to pay what he wants. So let's get him out of here before the end of the season and get something for him, which, a lot of times that's one of the cardinal sins of baseball is these teams that'll hold on to guys through the trade line and then they leave as free agents. And it's like, why? Like, you weren't going to compete anyway. So So yeah, it's a lot of turnover right now. Still waiting to get some guys back from injury like Rasmus Alm and Joel Klaus. Still waiting to integrate Kessler, who cannot play yet. He's got to wait essentially till MLS season starts up again, which is at the end of the month. The Leagues Cup, which is currently going, he's already played a game for New England, which is where he's coming from. So he can't play for two different teams in the same tournament. So he's got to wait, just like Parker can't go play for New England because he's already played for City. So he's got to wait till the end of the month. And then Jonas Horn, who's another defenseman they're bringing over from Germany, should be here at some point, but nobody really knows. Nobody's really heard anything yet on where he is. So, a lot of turnover. And it's really been kind of a whirlwind of player movement so far.
So where does this lead City going into so we're still technically in the middle of a season, right? Or is September the start of a new season?
No. So MLS has one big long season. Okay. In the middle of it, they take this month break essentially for the Leagues Cup. And that's that controversial tournament I think we talked a little bit about. It's the big controversy right now with the boycotts that are going on with the supporters groups and all that stuff. And the Leagues Cup tournament is essentially right now, which means the league is shut down for this tournament. At the end of the month, the season will start back up again. And City, I believe, has 9 games remaining in the regular season. Okay. Now, if you talk about the Mexican league, Liga MX, they actually play 2 separate seasons each year. They have the Apertura and the Clausura. And so what they do is they play a season in the spring, essentially. Then when it gets too hot, they kind of shut down. And then they play like a fall winter season. And so you have 2 champions every year. It's basically like a half season, then a break, then a half season, right?
Okay.
They don't play during the summer because it's just too hot. So
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and some people have suggested that MLS do something like that because of the weather that we have in certain cities, including here in the summertime where it's miserably hot. Last year we played some games where it was just brutally hot, especially this time of year. We had a couple in during Leagues Cup that were just horrifically bad. These guys are running, 5-6 miles a game and try to do that and be physical and kick a ball around when it's 93, 94 degrees out. It's tough. It takes a lot out of these guys. So, so we're still in the season. City is still in Leagues Cup. So they play this weekend, Friday night, against Portland. And, they're now in the knockout phase. So if they lose at any point, they're done and would be done until essentially, basically the end of the month when MLS starts back up again.
Okay. So I kind of was taking a look at the standings and I'm looking at their points. With 9 games left, does City even have if they win out, they need a ton of help. But can they still mathematically make the playoffs or are they out?
Mathematically, they can make it. There is still a they are not eliminated from a points perspective. Now, are they in a good position to make it? Absolutely not. They have 9 games left, which means that's a maximum of 27 points. I've seen calculations. I've seen estimations. I've seen people like Matt Baker from Play Over Footy estimate that they probably need 7 wins out of the 9 games to even have a realistic chance at it. That sounds about right to me. I don't think that they can drop more than about 2 or 3 matches and still have a chance. Because even if they were to get, let's say, 6 wins, that gets you 18 points. That gets you to 41. That's probably not cutting it, right? Honestly, it's probably not going to get you there. So, you're trying to get to 9th, which is essentially the 8-9 is the play-in game, and so you have a single game between the 8-9 seeds, and then you go into the actual playoffs. So I think that if they can get, and 7 wins is a lot out of 9, and they play a lot of them on the road. There's only probably 2 matches that they would look at though and say, okay, we're clearly not the favorite in these matches. The rest of them, they're probably going to be pretty evenly matched up, assuming that they have everybody back that's hurt, that's going to be able to play this year, like Klaus and Alm and those guys. and assuming they have kind of the full team integrated with their new players. Like I said, I talked about Hartle and Toyshirt and Jake Gerber Reich, who's the new Australian fullback or defensive back that they brought in as well, and Horn who's coming, and Vector, and also all these guys who are being added to the squad. They're hoping to integrate them as quickly as possible. So I think 7 wins out of 9 probably gets you close, and then if you can get 2 draws out of those other points, then I think that's probably enough to get you in. But anything less than that's going to be really hard.
So go ahead, Jordan.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, buddy.
So are we relying on anybody else's help, or are we in control of our own destiny here, or do we need some certain teams to lose? And even if we go on, win these 8 out of 10 or whatever we have left, do we, like I said, are we counting on anybody, or is it our own destiny?
So you're counting on a lot because currently they're 10 points back of 9th, which means they're in 13th out of 14 teams. So that means they've got to climb over Sporting KC, Dallas, Austin, and then Minnesota's currently in 9th. Now, the only thing that's somewhat an advantage when you look at who they have to play, they still have to play Minnesota twice. Minnesota comes here, and then we go down there. The last game of the year, which I'm actually going to Minneapolis for, it's the last game of the season in October, is at Minnesota. And so I'm like, hey, maybe that will be a, kind of a de facto play-in game type situation. So if you just look at it straight from, the 9th position down, they do have some games against those teams. They still have to play, Kansas still has not come here this year. They're coming here before the end of the year. And so they're going to have a chance to make up some ground. Unfortunately, they had just such a stretch of turning wins into ties and ties into losses that had you flipped 2 or 3 of those results, they'd be in a perfect, they'd be in just a fine position to make the playoffs, especially now because everybody's assuming that all these players are going to make them that much better. But they are definitely not in a position where they can control their own destiny, not having to jump that many teams for sure.
Okay.
So realistically, as new soccer fans, should we look at this in this perspective of a hockey team or a baseball team or a football team, sports we're very familiar with, that the season's over at this point and we're building into next year? And what other moves? I mean, obviously we still got to go find a coach. Or do you think this interim guy is going to get the interim tag removed? What do you think is going to happen there?
Good question.
I mean, I would be a little surprised if Hackworth is the coach next year.
Okay.
I've been personally a little critical of him. I thought that everybody kind of jumped the gun saying, this is the second coming. This is the guy who's going to fix everything. And I don't necessarily buy that. He is a very well-respected soccer person. I'm not, trying to disparage his credentials. I think he's perfectly positioned as what his current job is, which is technical director, which is kind of overseeing, the entire organization, the entire club's, style and training, and the technical director that's what his job is. He's not just worried about the senior club. He's worried all the way down, all the way through the organization to try and ensure that the level and style of play is consistent, right? Because what you don't want is your academy teams playing one style and then your City 2 team playing a different style. And then when they get to the senior team, those guys are like, well, we don't know how to play the style that the senior team wants to play, right? You need consistency all through the organization. So, that's his job. It still is his job title along with interim coach. I don't necessarily think that he's probably going to be the coach next year. I think that Lutz probably has, knowing Lutz, like, it wouldn't shock me if he already knows who it's going to be. And he's just kind of letting the season play out. But, yes, they we had this same conversation months ago when we talked about the Blues. I was like, the first thing they need to do in the offseason is figure out who the coach is, right? Like, either get rid of the interim tag and make Hackworth the coach, or announce who it's going to be and get ready and move on. So it's definitely a concern as to who's going to be coaching this team next year. Now, from a roster perspective, they're in a pretty good spot. They don't have too many spots that they're going to have to worry about filling next year. There's a few depth pieces that are probably going to move on. They also have an expansion draft coming up that they may lose somebody in because San Diego's joining next year.
Right.
And so they may lose somebody there. They're not exempted from it, so even though they're a new team, everybody's part of that draft. So,
Okay.
so yeah, they may see that, but
So will it work
realistically,
like
yeah,
hockey
go ahead.
where they can only protect? Yeah, I want to stop you there because I know you got more to
Yeah.
go, but I got
No, you're fine.
Is it going to be like hockey where they can protect 8 players and everybody else on the roster is fair game, or how does an expansion draft work in soccer?
In typical MLS fashion, they haven't announced it. MLS, unlike any other league that you've ever watched, does stuff on the fly, does stuff last second, changes their mind. Like they've already made roster changes during the season this year. Like during the season, came out and said, okay, we're going to change how some of the money works and some of the roster slots work. And they're doing it in the middle of the year, right? And so the MLS is notorious for this. And so every expansion draft that's happened so far have all been under different rules. So until they announce what they're going to do this time, I don't think anybody really has an idea. Now, they may already have kind of told the clubs what they're thinking about doing, but they haven't certainly announced it publicly, right? And so there will be situations where, guys, there is a protected kind of thing. You would assume that they'll do that again. There have been transactions in the past where some of the cap money, TAM and GAM and that stuff will get traded, or you'll make a trade to not pick somebody, or, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen until they announce it. Like we really can't kind of like prepare ourselves, but I would assume that there will be some turnover in the off season, but I think they're making most of these changes now with the assumption that, hey, 90% of this roster is probably going to be back next year at this point. So.
Okay. So run it back.
Well, it's not so much run it back because I think they're using the rest of this season to say, okay, yes, if we can make a run for the playoffs, great. Like, we'd love to get in, but we may have dug ourselves too big of a hole, had too many injuries, had too much, just poor play. But I think what they're trying to do is say, look, this is the opportunity for all these new guys to grab their starting spot, to, integrate with the club, to figure out how we want to play, to teach those guys how to play together stylistically, and to go into next season, even if we don't make this year's playoffs, to go into next year and be raring to go. And if you take this roster and you can snap your finger and make everybody healthy for the start of next season, I think every City fan's going to be like, yeah, this team's going to be pretty loaded. Now, do we have the very, very high end talent like a Miami and Messi, or, LA with Griezmann, or, Olivier Giroud, or some of these guys are coming up from Europe? No, we don't have those types of guys. Right. But from a depth perspective, they're going to be in such a better position than they were this year. When you talk about guys like Celio, who's been out for the year with his terrible leg injury, Tomas Ostrak was playing really well. That was another guy that was playing awesome for us. He's been out for the rest of the year with the injury. They're getting guys that are better than those guys, who now you can bring those guys in and be able to just throw waves of people at teams. And there's not a lot of teams, assuming that they keep most of these guys going into next year. There's very few teams that are going to have the depth that they're going to have next year.
I got a player question for you.
Sure, absolutely.
What is Pavel Dimitra's son going to do, and when will we see him with the big club?
So that was a very cool thing that they did sign him. I think everybody kind of was like, oh, obviously that name means a lot to a lot of people around here, myself included, who grew up watching his dad play. I don't know if there's any real expectations of him ever making the senior club. But that's not to say that he can't be a solid producing player for City 2. And that people can go down and watch City 2 games and see him play. City 2 games are very fun. It is a completely different environment than City matches. City 2 is far more centered and designed around kids. They do all this stuff for kids. There's the kids supporters group sections. There's singing and chanting and all kinds of stuff. It's very family oriented. The tickets are far, far less expensive. You can get in there pretty cheaply. And it's a great value, and it's a great way to take your family out to a professional sporting event, not spend a ton of money, not put them in an environment where, some kids are kind of overwhelmed by noise and stuff like that. Like that's not what City 2 matches are about. City 2 matches are designed to, introduce the game and introduce the experience of going to a game to that kind of next generation. Right. And it's a brilliant thing that they're doing. And if they're doing it that way and having games at City Park, a lot of teams in the league do not let their second tier team, let their next pro team play at their stadium. Kansas plays at some, it looks like a rec park out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like City 2 played there this year, and the field looked like it was completely dead. Like all the grass was dead. It was horrible. And so I really think it says a lot about the organization that they're like, no, these guys are part of the club too. They're part of the organization. They deserve to play where the big boys play, right? Where the main club plays. So yeah, I can't, stress enough to people, even if you're, you may not be a big soccer fan, you may not have much interest in it. I always say it's similar to me to hockey, where the way to make somebody a fan is to get them down to a game. But if you're looking for something to do with your kids on a Sunday, because most of their games are Sundays, if you're looking something to do on a Sunday afternoon, you are well advised to check out City 2 games with your kids. It really is cool, and it's really designed for them. So
cool. I didn't know that. I just thought it was like a minor league affiliation of younger guys trying to make it their way through.
It is, it is, but you're also the way that they're doing it, the way that it's designed, and who they're marketing it to is far different. So it's something that, and again, there will be people, I'm sure, who go to City 2 matches to see, some of the local kids, like a Caden Glover from Columbia, or Tyson Pierce, or, like Miguel Perez when he was, not on loan, things like that. There'll be guys, people who go there to watch the local kids that are in the system. There are, people who go there just because it's something to do on a Sunday and they like soccer and they want to watch a match. And then there's plenty of people who just go because, hey, it's a cheap and easy thing to do with my kids. It's outside. It's fun. There's tons of other kids there. And so they're really doing a good job of kind of marketing it that way. So, and leave all the controversy and all the noise and all that stuff for the big club. Because there is a lot of stuff going on around the big club right now. So none of that really applies at City 2 matches. It's more of just fun. All the players are younger guys who are eager to, take pictures and give autographs and all that kind of fun stuff for kids. So
fantastic. Is there anything else about City that we need to know about right now? Because I don't have any more.
Well, yeah, I mean, really the only thing that's going on. So if people stumble into the controversies that are going on right now, is the controversy about Leagues Cup itself, which is a tournament they're currently in. It's a very controversial topic in the city itself. The fan base is very divided right now about this because there is an organized supporters boycott of this tournament. So in this country, for over 100 years, there is a tournament called the U.S. Open Cup. The U.S. Open Cup is a tournament much like U.S. Open in golf. That's a good equivalent of it, where anybody essentially can enter it. So any team can enter the U.S. Open Cup. And St. Louis has won 10 of these tournaments over the course of 100 plus years. We have 10 winners in the city, which is the most of any one city. And the equivalent of this tournament is the very well-known FA Cup in England, which is all of the English teams. So what you wind up with is these low-level teams that have to play through different tiers, just like qualifying in the U.S. Golf Tournament, U.S. Open Golf. And eventually you get high enough to where the bigger clubs start to get integrated into the tournament. Okay. And the US Open Cup works that same way, as you have these low level teams and they play and they kind of advance through the levels. And then once you get to a certain round, then all of a sudden, okay, here come the bigger clubs, and what you wind up with is these really cool, a big club traveling to some tiny little town to play in their tiny stadium. And it really helps grow the game, and it's really fun. And once in a while, these big clubs will get beat. They call them cup sets, which are really fun to watch and neat. And so this tournament has been a big part of soccer culture in this country, and especially in St. Louis, for a very long time. Unfortunately, the downside to it is that the MLS does not control that tournament. It's controlled by U.S. Soccer, which means that the MLS doesn't really make money off of it. And that's the only thing that really drives MLS is how do we make money off things? So the decision was made this year to not allow all of the MLS teams to play in U.S. Open Cup. Essentially, they picked 8 or 9 teams out of MLS and said, those are the ones that are going to get to play in it. Everybody else is not allowed to play in it. And it's because of schedule congestion. We're playing too many games. Well, this really kind of infuriated the supporters groups, especially here in St. Louis, because you're creating your own problem because you created Leagues Cup, which is a tournament that didn't exist until like 3 years ago, right? Leagues Cup didn't exist. You create a tournament that now MLS owns, controls, and makes all the money off of, and you exclude U.S. Open Cup because you're saying that you are playing too many games. So you created your own problem, and to fix it, you get rid of the tournament that you don't directly control. And so the only way that really the message could get sent to the league, in the opinion of a lot of the supporters groups, was to boycott. And so, a bunch of the primary supporters groups for City, the Looligans, the Thieves, I don't want to exclude everybody, but there's 6 or 7, biggest ones. They all get together and said, hey, we're not going to have any official presence. We're not going to have the block party at Schlafly, which the Looligans have for every match. Estiel Santos, which is the Hispanic supporters group, they weren't going to do anything at Pepper Lounge, which they do for every match. No flags, drums, all the chanting, all that stuff in the North End for all the matches. None of that was going to happen. Now, they said all along that if you want to go, if any person wants to go, they should go. Go to the matches, enjoy it. They just were not going to have any official presence at these matches. And it's really been controversial in the fan base because for the people who aren't part of the supporters groups or don't really understand why a U.S. Open Cup is so important to those of us who believe it's important, they look at it as, our team is playing, you should be there. There should be no, you're abandoning the club. You're not good fans. So it's been a very controversial thing. And it's unfortunate that it's kind of divided the fan base right now between people who are pro Open Cup and people who are not really understanding why it's so important, and who think that the supporters have ruined the atmosphere, have set up an environment that the new players who are coming here are going to be like, oh, I thought this was supposed to be so loud and great, and and the supporter groups are like, well, yeah, wait till the season starts back up, and we'll be back, but so this is something. It's unfortunate. And it's still very controversial. And Santos decided this week that they are going to drop the boycott and come back for Friday night's game because it's now a knockout round. And so they made that decision kind of between them and their members to come back, which has also caused a lot of controversy, which, all the other supporters groups are still boycotting. So this is a big thing right now. And a lot of people who are outside the realm of what's going on don't really understand it. But it's a big deal. And so hopefully everybody can kind of, get on the same page, understand, even if you don't understand why the Open Cup is important. The people who are protesting or boycotting believe that it is, and that should be enough for them to not be, ridiculed for it or told they're not good fans, because it's something that does matter to us as longtime soccer fans in St. Louis. We had a team here. We had St. Louis FC, and we had teams here before City, right? And those teams did play in the U.S. Open Cup, and it was important to us. So that's outside the player movement, outside all that stuff that's been going on with the team itself. There is this kind of element of the fan base being kind of fractured over all this controversy. So hopefully that all gets worked out and everybody, once the season starts back up again is back and everything's back to normal. And hopefully the MLS gets the message and allows for Open Cup competition next year and lets everybody in it, which they could easily do. So.
Well, I say boycott. That's what I say. I don't know what side you're on. I think I know what side you're on from the way you explained it.
Oh,
I say boycott.
Wearing a Looligan hat should be a giveaway.
That's
like
kind of what I was going with. But.
And over my left shoulder is an Open Cup scarf. So Yes, I have not gone to either of the Leagues Cups games here so far. I won't be going. I don't criticize or judge anybody who wants to go. Like, to me, it's the perfect chance, because one of the complaints is that ticket prices are on the secondary market are so high, right? Because of demand so high. This is the perfect opportunity that if you've never been to a game, now you won't be getting the same experience because, again, all the supporters groups aren't participating, so you're not going to have the flags and the drums and all the stuff that goes along with a normal match. You won't have all that. But if you want to see City play, especially see the new guys play, and you want to get very cheap tickets in comparison to what they normally are, now is your chance. Like, feel free to go. And most of the supporters groups have said all along, hey, if you want to go, go. We're just not going to do anything official. Like, there's plenty of people that I know in the Lilligans and in some of the other supporters groups who have gone to both those matches and are going Friday. And that's perfectly fine. Like, I'm not judging them. Like, everybody has their own way of kind of standing up for what they believe in. And if you want to go, you should go. Like, absolutely. Like, there should be no judgment either way. And I think that's always been the kind of the message, at least from the supporters groups, is if you want to go to the matches, go. And hopefully those who are not understanding why the boycott is happening will be a little more understanding of the people who aren't going to go, and are not expecting like, oh, well, the supporters should be there. They owe us that environment. That's a lot of work that the people who are in the supporters groups put in. The Florida Noise, the drum corps, the flags, the tifos. This is, none of these people get paid for that stuff. It's a labor of love. It's their passion. It's their hobby. They're not being paid. And so there should be zero expectation of, oh, well, you're letting everybody else down because you're not showing up and banging drums or chanting. There shouldn't be any of that, but unfortunately there is. And so, yeah, I think hopefully that, hopefully City, makes a deep run in the Leagues Cup and wins, some more games, and that'd be great for them and for the club. But I'm hoping that the fan base comes together once the MLS season restarts. So,
fair enough. Jordan, you got anything else for our City expert insider?
No, he great explanation on everything. I look forward to when you're on with us because I really catch up on things and you're just a great educator on the game of soccer and for St. Louis and for St. Louis SC and
thank you.
That's it though. But yeah,
and thank you for coming to my TED Talk on that. Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that I know we want to move on to talk Cardinals, but I'll wrap it up with City. Like, I really, really, really respect the supporters groups right now. The lead, the people who are kind of the faces of some of these groups for biting their tongues, especially on social media. As people outside the groups are really blasting them for not participating fully. I fought it for as long as I could, but even I've had to be like, hey, I gotta say something. Like, I have to stand up for those who are kind of taking the high road and not responding to a lot of the criticism. And I'm respectful about it, and I understand like everybody has their opinion and they're entitled to it. But I just try to educate people who are critical to don't really understand why it's so important or why it means so much to us. And I'm just trying to educate people, and if they want to still have that attitude of, you guys aren't real fans and you're abandoning the club, like you're never going to change somebody's mind if that's their mindset. But at least, I'm trying to explain to people who don't have an opinion. Like, I'm not trying to sway anybody to anybody's side, but I just want everybody to understand, like, if you go to a game and it's the first one you ever go to and you're kind of looking around like, oh, I thought this would be a lot louder, or I thought there would be a lot more stuff going on. There's a reason why. And so that's all I want to try to do is just educate people. So
love it.
Fair enough. Well, that was the City Corner because I totally forgot the graphic at the beginning. My apologies. But let's move on to some St. Louis Cardinals.
What a team. What a ride. The Cardinals are world champ.
And with that soundbite, can we not? Okay, hold on. First, did you guys watch the game where it was Buck and Carey?
Which game was that?
It was Texas Rangers last week.
I missed it.
You missed it. You bum.
Hey.
You call yourselves a Cardinal fan. You bum. No, just
Children.
Buck still has it for baseball, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what you think about him. We all love his dad. We all loved his dad. But he has still got it for baseball, and it was one of the most enjoyable games I've heard called this season. Chris, would you agree or disagree?
It was fun. Would I want that all the time? No. But it was cool as a one-off for sure.
I would be fine with it like once or twice a month. I could get behind that.
I don't know. It's tough to have more than one play-by-play guy.
That's true.
Because especially with baseball, because I was always a bigger fan of guys who respected the fact that when you're broadcasting on television, it's a visual medium and the game can speak for itself a lot of times. That's why I thought growing up, I was a huge Bob Costas fan when he used to do a lot of baseball. Because for a lot of times, if there was a big play, he would just stay silent. And that's one of the keys about things that make these really good broadcasters, especially for baseball, so good, is that if you're a radio guy, you have to paint a picture. That's why guys like Jack Buck and Vin Scully and Vin Scully could talk and paint you a picture of what was going on, not only in the ballpark, but in the entire city. And it was artistry, right? And Jack Buck could do that. And these guys who were the radio guys could do that. But the baseball guys, sometimes you're just like, no, just shut up. We can see what's going on. Just let the play speak for itself. Right. And I think sometimes, I don't know how it would work if they did this more often, because I think they're both play-by-play guys. They're not analysts. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily want it. I thought it was a cool kind of one-off thing. But I wouldn't necessarily want it all the time. So
I guess just falling asleep listening to Jack growing up. And believe it or not, I told you guys when we were talking earlier, we moved to South Bend, Indiana when I was like 3.5. But at night, we could still pick up KMOX all the way in South Bend out of St. Louis. I'm not kidding you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would listen to Cardinals games at night when I was a kid, and that's how I would go to sleep. So for me, I guess it's probably nostalgia more than anything.
That was why the Cardinals, historically, the Cardinals fan base is so big, is because of KMOX. They were the westernmost Major League Baseball team for a long, long, long time. And having that, that massive broadcast power that KMOX did, they would reach, huge swaths of the country. And that's why they were so popular for so long, is because that was kind of the only game in town for people on the radio, so I still remember and miss the days of, I think I really took advantage of the MLB streaming package when it first came out, because one of the things I would love doing is, and I'm a diehard, Cardinals fan, grew up here, lived here all my life. But one of my favorite things about that was that you could flip on games from anywhere. And so during summer times, when that first happened, when they first released that streaming package, MLB.TV, I would turn Dodgers games on to their radio feed, and I could listen to Vin Scully call games. Not that I really cared about what the Dodgers were doing or who they played, but that was like the greatest background noise ever. Like if I was working on my computer or doing some work or hanging out with my dogs, to have the soundtrack of Vin Scully in the background was just awesome, and that was one of those things that I miss, is that you miss those guys. Like you said, I grew up with Jack Buck too. I miss that. And it's never going to be the same because of the way that media has changed. So,
right. We all talk about Jack all the time, and not like he's forgotten by any means, because he was amazing in the booth too with Mike Shannon.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like I said, I talk about Jack all the time. But Mike obviously was huge influence as well. And he called games for years, even after Jack was gone. We've just been so blessed as St. Louis fans to have some of the greatest sports announcers in history. I mean, I'm talking not just baseball, but hockey and football. We've had some great ones. And I haven't listened to a City game on the radio yet, because I've never found the City game on a radio. Do they even do radio broadcast for something?
Oh, yeah. Y98.
Okay. I just got to, okay. Y98. Thank you. You gave me a station.
So Joey Zanaboni, who is he's a super nice guy. I've met him once or twice. Went to a book signing where he did the forward for a book here in St. Louis written by Dave Lang, who's like one of the great soccer writers in the country, who's from St. Louis. Joey is a super energetic guy. He will ask before every game on Twitter or X. He'll say, "Hey, any fun shout outs I need to do tonight, or any inclusions of things if they score." Like, he's a super energetic guy. And he actually he got a job over this last year, that baseball tournament they did in Dubai, which was a bunch of the like ex-pros. So there was this baseball tournament overseas last year. In it was either Dubai or Saudi, one of those places over in the Middle East. He got the job calling that. So he was actually the play-by-play guy for that tournament. And so he does a really good job. And then the Spanish broadcast is Santiago Beltran, who is one of the flyover footy guys. Santi is one of the nicest guys in the area, in the soccer scene. Super good dude. And he's the Spanish language broadcaster. So they have both. One of the nice things is that on the Apple TV package, which is where you watch MLS games, you can actually alternate to the local radio of the home team. So if City's playing at home and you're not at the game and you want to listen to Joey, or you want to listen, you can do that. You can just switch the audio feed. So it's really cool.
So Joey Zamboni.
Joey Zanaboni.
Zanaboni. Okay. I was going to say, I heard Zamboni.
Not Zamboni.
He's got a hockey name.
Joey Zanaboni.
Well, okay. So we started with that. I just want to get you guys' opinion on the call of the game. Let's talk about Cardinal baseball. Let's talk about our new players. Let's talk about the Phamtastic start Tommy had when he came home. We can talk about Mr. Friday, the new starting pitcher we got. And he had a rough first outing in Chicago. He looked a little bit better tonight. And then we also got this other relief pitcher who I have not been impressed by yet, Mr. Armstrong. But let's talk shop, guys. The Cardinals have had a rough stretch. They played really well against Texas, and ever since then, they've played it like absolute dog poo. Lost 3 out of 4 to Chicago. Lost the makeup game to the Mets earlier in the week. Had a good bounce-back game. They tried to give away in the 9th inning to Tampa Bay last night. We've got a nice 5-2 lead right now in the bottom of the 7th with no outs. Hold on. I'll give you a live update here. Donovan just grounded out to first, so there's 1 out now in the bottom of the 7th. But we're up 5-2, and both teams are wearing their City Connect jerseys, which is actually really cool. I like Tampa Bay's. I don't know if you guys do or not. I think they look sharp. But Jordan, what do you think about our new players? Are you excited about our new guys? New guys, not guys who returned, the new guys.
I'm excited to see them play. And especially the pitching. Our guys that pitching, we got what's his name going tomorrow. Or did he go or tonight?
He's tonight. Fetty went tonight.
Yeah, it's Fetty. That's right. He went tonight. I'm excited to see some of the pitchers, but other than that, I'm excited to see them play. But it's just like another year. We pick up some of these guys at the deadline, or we have our young guys come up, and it's like we just play, and it's just not there. It was really disappointing losing those 3 games to the Cubs. And then it was really important, that Mets game, because with them winning that one game, they now have the tiebreaker over us if it comes down to it, which is very important for the last wild card spot, because it's kind of like us and the Mets kind of fighting for that last wild card spot. But other than that, I want to see our young guys play. I want to see them perform. And then other than Tommy Pham coming back, he's been killer in our lineup. He's had a couple doubles, he's had a triple, a couple home runs. I think he has like 9 RBIs. Just came back, stuff like that. But yeah, man, I'm excited to see him. There's some also questionable call-ups. In my opinion, they should have called up Herrera to be DH or to catch or something. I don't know why they keep having this guy play catcher. I don't know if they're wanting him to be our catcher in the future or something or what. But we struggle against lefties, and we need right-handed batters up here to face these lefties, not our lefties, because our lefties are actually, I think, like top 5 in the league, like worst against left-handed pitchers. But they've making some questionable call-ups, which I wasn't quite sure why. They didn't call up Herrera. Herrera is a good bat to have in your lineup, especially he can play DH if you're trying to have this guy catch. But then again, if you're playing him DH, you're either giving Contreras a night off or Contreras is catching if it's a left-handed pitcher. But I don't know. It's kind of rough right now. It was good seeing when playing good. He made a nice the final out of the game last night on a rocket to first. It kind of got to the ball, I think a little later, or he bobbled it or something, and he threw like 100 miles an hour right to finish the game. And then Victor Scott coming up, hitting his first home run. That was big for him. Apparently he's been working. What's his name? What's that lefty? I forget his name. Ludwig. Yes, thank you. Apparently he's been working with Ludwig, and he came up and he hit that home run, which was nice to see. A lot of people questioned why didn't we call up Walker and stuff like that. He's been hitting kind of good down in the minor leagues, but I mean, I know it's the minor leagues, it's not the upper league, but that's a power right-handed bat that should be in this lineup anyway. I know he's had his struggles, but man, I really hope he finds his bat, because that would bring a big spark to this team if he came up here and just started raking. I mean, Goldschmidt's and Arenado's being moved down the lineup. I know I'm kind of spitting fire. Sorry, I got a lot on my chest to get off.
Shotgun spread. Go for it, buddy.
All right. So, all right. Yeah, just stop me at any point. But anyway, guys moving down our lineup. I mean, this is just crazy. I mean, Arenado I just can't believe like how he's playing this year. It's like, I don't even get excited when he comes up to the plate anymore. It's like, you know, he could have the game on the line. It's like, okay, if it's like another day, he's going to ground out or pop fly out or strike out. And then that, moving him down to sixth. I mean, that's, it's crazy. But I mean, it is what it is. We got to move our guys. We got to get hits. I mean, and if they start hitting, that will be great, because then they're dangerous down the lineup, getting our young guys, our speedy guys on base, and then them coming up, maybe have a little pop, maybe get a double, home run, something just to keep our guys moving. We just need to score. We're not scoring. But yeah, that's all I got on that.
Chris, what do you think about the call-ups and the decisions that have been made?
I mean, it's like an engine that is out of tune, right? It's like part of it will start to go, and then the other part is not working correctly. Like some guys will start hitting, the other, and very rarely do you ever have a season where your whole team hits, right?
Right.
Even some of the monster, Cardinal seasons, like the 03, 04, 05, that stretch, right? Like, I remember, Renteria had a monster year, and then the next year it was like, okay, everybody else is hitting, but he had a down season, right? Like, you're never going to get everybody performing. That's very, very rare. But like, the guy right now who is just struggling, like beyond belief, is Gorman. It's like, what are you doing with him? Like, and you don't want to, it's like you cannot continue to have these guys that you bring up and they just kind of fizzle out. And then you're like, okay, you're stuck in this same position again, where you're like, okay, is this, is he the guy he is this year, or he is the guy last year? Like, everybody under the sun would have thought he's a 30 home run guy this year, at least. And yeah, he's going to strike out a lot, but that's always what he's been. And now it's like, okay, you're not going to play him because he strikes out too much. Well, when you drafted him, he struck out too much. Like, you knew that was the trade-off with this massive power, is that he's a guy who's going to strike out a lot. Well, you can't now all of a sudden decide, well, yeah, he just strikes out too much. Well, I mean, the ship has sailed. He is what he is at this point, right? Like, you're not going to try to remake his swing, even though he's still a young player. I mean, you're not going to do a Jordan Walker thing where you're just going to keep, tinkering with his swing to the point you ruin him, whereas who knows what his swing is going to ultimately turn out to be. So the Gorman thing is just really frustrating to me. And so that's what I think, like right now with their lineup, is just, you've got your corners where you're supposed to be getting production and power typically, which you're not. Obviously Arenado's been bad this year. Goldie's been not good this year. You expected to get production out of Gorman. You're not getting it. You're essentially sacrificing center field for defense. When you think about who's played there this year, it's been mostly Ciani, who doesn't hit. Great defender, but doesn't hit.
Well, he didn't hit until July.
Yeah,
that's July, true. He hit over 300.
Yeah. Yes, he has been. Who he's been up until this point. He has been Peter Borges 2.0, which was all glove, no bat.
Yep.
But he did start to hit in July, so that's a positive. But when you talk or you think about the moves that they made, no team addressed more of their issues directly than the Cardinals did.
True.
But they didn't get guys who are super high end to fill those roles.
Bingo.
Right. So it's not like they went out and traded for 4 superstars. No, they said we have a shopping list, but everything they bought at the store was off the bottom shelf and not the top. Right. So they needed cereal. They got the giant bag of whatever and not the brand name. And so that I think has been kind of the issue is that, yes, they filled all their needs, but they didn't go out and get super high end guys at any of those. Now, it could still work. And I think they still want to sprinkle the Cardinals magic on this, but it's getting awfully late in the season to magically find production, so.
Well, we're about the time of the season when that 17 game winning streak comes into play. Mike Schilt. But I mean, so to sum up where you guys both were at, I wanted Gorman traded at the deadline because I figured we could have gotten a haul for him because somebody would take a risk on that bat with that power, 30 to 40 home runs a year from the left side of the plate. I agree with you. Something you said there, Chris, that yes, we knew that he was a strikeout guy from the get-go. Striking out 30% of the time at the plate's one thing. Striking out 50% of the time you come to the plate is a whole different ballgame for me. So I can deal with you striking out 30 to 35% of the time. If you're going to hit me 35 to 40 home runs and you're going to get me 90 to 110 RBIs, that's totally playable every year, all day long. Take it. But when you're walking back to the dugout half the times you come to the plate because you strike out, that to me is a totally different issue. And if they weren't going to trade him, I wish they would have set him down.
Yeah.
I was perfectly fine with the call up. Perfectly fine is probably too much of a description. I was okay with the call up of Victor Scott the second because they are prioritizing defense like you touched on. Siani's been a gold glove contender in center field for the Cardinals this year. No doubt about it. Dude has saved so many runs defensively, it's not even funny. I would have rather seen Walker come up with what he's been doing in the last 3 weeks. That's fine. Leave him down there the rest of the year. Let him cook. And when end of the season call-ups happen, bring him up then. But I also agree with you, Jordan. I would have rather had Herrera on the bench as a bat, and I would have sent Pages back down. Because you know what? Herrera's got a better bat than Pages. Pages hasn't thrown anybody out stealing, and I can't remember how long it's been. So pop time and arm strength right now are not an issue for our backup catcher, or it shouldn't be part of the conversation. And Herrera's 10 times the hitter Pages is. So I agree with you. I think Herrera should have been called up. I'm okay with Scott being called up because he is excellent in center field as a defensive player, and maybe he'll find it. His bat has gotten better this year in the minors as the season has gone on, mostly as of late. Like you mentioned earlier, he's been working with Ludwig, and Ludwig is the one who got him to, give that little leg kick, that little tap step. And I was watching the pregame today, and the quote, in quote verbatim, that he said it made him feel like he was dancing with the pitcher. It's about finding that rhythm, and that's why he's getting more contact. BT said that he had never heard it described like that, but it made total sense to him. And as he was talking about it, and then I was watching the at-bat, I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense. He's literally he's tapping with the count of the pitcher, what the pitcher is doing. So if that ends up working for him and he ends up turning into a 260 hitter and can get on base, can you imagine what it would be like to have Vince Coleman and Ozzie Smith on the bases at the exact same time again? I mean, seriously, Mason Wynn and Victor Scott II on first and second with Alec Burleson up to bat. Tell me that pitcher is not going to be shaken out of his cleats and the catcher's not going to know what to do when the pitch comes to him. That would be a threat on the bags. So I get where they're at. I would have rather seen this call up with Victor Scott a little bit later in the season, but considering they wanted to play the defense and they don't trust their outfield and they just traded away Tommy Edman and they traded away Dylan Carlson at the deadline, you really didn't have many other options defensively that could go out there and play that spot. So that would be my defense of the Cardinals in calling up Victor Scott II. But I still think Gorman should have been disposed of one way or another via trade or sent down to the minors until he got his head out of his rear end. And I'd rather see Jordan Walker struggle and come through his problems at the major league level because, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing this a little bit longer than I have, there's only so much you can work on in hitting in the minor leagues. You have to see major league pitching to learn to hit major league pitching. So sending him back down again, probably in my opinion, was the worst possible decision. I would have let him work it out, especially with the way we had Siani going. Arenado hasn't been hitting. Goldschmidt hasn't been hitting. Contreras was out for 40 games. Donovan didn't get hot until June. Nobody was hitting, so I don't see the whole point in sending Walker down all season the way they have. But that's just me. I'm still a big Walker supporter. I don't believe he's broken yet. I think they're on the very cusp of breaking him and destroying him, and then they're going to have to trade him for pennies on the dollar of what they could get for him if he was raking the way we know he has the ability to do. But Tommy Pham has been Phamtastic. Grand slam pitch hit in his first at bat back with the Cardinals. He ended up getting 2 RBIs the next day, so he had 6 RBIs in 2 games. He's not the defensive guy he used to be. I can tell you that much. I've seen him miss a couple balls out in the outfield where he just didn't quite get there. The legs didn't seem to be there. And I don't contribute that to effort. I contribute that just not having it in the tank anymore. Chris, would you agree?
Yeah, Pham he's a perfect guy for the back half or back third of a season. I think his act in the clubhouse wears thin over 162 games.
There you go.
It's a very long season. You can't treat every game. Not every player is going to treat every game like it's the 7th game of the World Series every single day. And I think that's the way he plays. And I think, and from what I've heard and what I understand is that started to grate on people, is that he's so intense all the time that it's like, dude, if it's the second game of a doubleheader in the middle of June, and I don't run out of ground ball, don't jump down my throat because it's 162 games. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so I think for a guy who is going to bring that intensity, and it's going to be a big burst of that in the clubhouse for the remainder of the season. Do I want him here next year? Probably not. But I think he's the perfect guy to inject that kind of energy, because this happened many, many years ago, for those of us who were old enough to remember it, when the Cardinals brought in Will Clark for the back half of a season. And they brought Will Clark in, and he was the perfect guy at the perfect time because he was that, hey, let's quit screwing around. And he brought that intensity, which you could only deal with for a short period of time, but it was enough for the rest of that season. So I think Pham's a great addition for the remainder of the year. Yeah.
I love his intensity. I love his fire. It's kind of what Arenado has, but Arenado channels it differently. We haven't seen it from Arenado this year, let's be honest, but we saw it a lot in the past. I'm hoping he provides a spark and we can find a way to get in the playoffs. I think the playoffs, the only way to do it is to win the division, because I don't think we can get the wild card. Not with the way the Padres have stepped up recently. They've been hot the second half of the season already so far. We're 3 games back of the Braves. The Braves are the last spot in the wild card. Didn't think we'd be saying that at this time this year.
Right.
We also didn't think they were going to be riddled with injuries the way they are.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're still in it is one thing. The Arizona has climbed all the way back into it. They're 11 games over 500. And you guys know I do the 7th-inning stretch. We were talking a month ago that Arizona wasn't even going to make the playoffs. So, I don't know. The Cardinals have to win the division, in my opinion, to make the playoffs, unless the Braves and the Mets were both just to fall off and the Padres hit a skid. But we're 2 games over 500 right now. We're still a minus 47 in run differential. Only 4 teams have made the playoffs, I believe, in the last 100 years with negative run differentials, or won a series in the playoffs with a negative run differential in the regular season. The Giants are right behind us. Pittsburgh's right behind us in our division. Chicago's right behind them. Inside our division alone, the division's not over. The division is still a wide open battle for everybody, even the Reds, because the Reds are only 4 games under 500. So, they're probably a little too far out to win the division, but could they sneak into the wild card if we win the division? Possibly. Pittsburgh's a threat with their pitching. We've had Chicago's number this year up until this last series, so I don't know what's going on there. But, this has been a very frustrating season for me. I was mad last year. I was just legitimately mad all season, just bitter, angry. This year, I had my hopes up. I thought DeWitt and Mo were going to go do things, and they were going to revitalize the team, and they weren't going to let the fans down in back-to-back years. Congratulations, you guys did. But I can't put all the blame on you. Arenado is not what Arenado has been. Goldschmidt is not what Goldschmidt has been. Contreras got hurt trying to steal a strike, and it cost him 40-something games. Gorman hasn't been able to hit the broadside of a barn and probably couldn't hit himself out of a wet paper bag at this point. So I can't put it all on ownership. I can't even put it all on management. Now, I can put a lot of questionable calls from Ollie Marmol. I can put those on him. I don't know how many games his questionable calls have cost us, maybe 7 or 8 this year, give or take, plus or minus. Chris?
Probably
Think
not
it's
as
that
many.
many?
Probably not as many as that.
Okay.
Because ultimately players still have to perform.
You're right.
And so yes, there are probably fewer games that were influenced directly by something that Marmol did or didn't do. And yes, hindsight is always 20/20. But it's, there's not many games where you point to it and you say, okay, the manager did something or didn't do something, and that directly led to them losing. Oftentimes it's, well, why did you bring this guy in that position? Or why did you leave that pitcher in one more batter? Or why did you pinch hit this guy as opposed to that guy? Those are all judgment calls. And those are, either, statistics driven, where they're using, analytics, or gut feeling or prior production against that particular player in that particular position, whatever. Like, I don't usually blame a manager for those types of decisions, right? Unless it's just egregious where, it's leaving, Pedro Martinez in against the Yankees for, one inning entirely too long and blowing the ALCS and years and years ago. Like, that was clearly a manager losing a game, right? In fact, losing a pennant. I think with Marmol, there are probably maybe 3 games this year that I would point at and say, okay, yeah, that was blatantly obvious that he made a bad call. But the rest of them, he went with what he thought was the best at the time, and the player didn't perform. So
that's a fair enough argument. Now, I will give Marmol some credit here. Every time he gets thrown out, we go on a winning streak. I think it's time for him to get ejected again. And maybe multiple times, because we need the W's right now. But every time this dude gets thrown off a ball game, we go on to win. If we don't win that game, we win a series of games after that. So I'm not trying to blame it all on them. Players do have to play the game. But I would like to say I foresee major changes on this roster in the offseason, but I don't. I don't at all. We've already heard that they're not going to increase payroll next year. And a lot of this has to – Jordan, I know you're shaking your head, but business is business, and the DeWitts are no longer in this to win baseball. They're in there to make money. Yeah. And I don't blame them, because that's what owners of businesses do. Their job is to make money because they have employees that have to make sure they get paid. I'm not saying that if the DeWitts went last year and lost, $50 million, they wouldn't be able to pay their employees. But that is the job of business owners to make sure your employees are paid. Goldie's probably coming off the books, even though now there's been rumors of interest of re-signing him. I don't think you can straight up re-sign him. I think you have to let him go to free agency and re-sign him and sign him back, because if they go to re-sign him, he can only take a 20% pay cut. So you got to let him go to free agency, and you got to get him on a deal. He's not worth nearly the amount of money he's going to be required to be paid at that 20% cut. I think there's a good chance that Arenado asks for a trade in the offseason. I really thought I'd get more of a reaction out of your face on that.
Maybe. I mean, I think people do underestimate how, he wanted to be a Cardinal. I think he enjoys being a Cardinal. I don't know if he's at the point where he's frustrated enough with them, not making moves, or, because that was clearly what it was in Colorado. It was like, hey, you guys are never doing anything trying to win, and to me, the question has become now with the Cardinals is, are they at a point where they are organizationally not going into every year saying, let's try to win a pennant and win the National League? And instead they're going in saying, let's try to win the Central Division, or let's try to make the playoffs. Because those are 2 very, very different things in the era of multiple wild cards, right?
Yep.
Because you can be a very mediocre team and still technically make the playoffs, and hang something up that says we made the wild card and we made the playoffs. Like, that is not the same thing as competing for making it to a World Series. That's the thing, is that I think they've started to slip into this attitude of, well, as long as we make it to the playoffs, that's a successful season. And, that's fine for a little while, but, this is not Cincinnati. It's not Pittsburgh, where if you happen to make the playoffs, that's a huge achievement.
Right.
And you have the risk of two things happening. Either the fan base just is upset because, hey, we got to the playoffs again and got knocked out in the first round. That's not good enough. But then that can happen, and that already has happened, where people are frustrated. But the worst thing is when your fan base just stops caring. And your fan base says, oh, well, they're going into the season not even giving a crap about, trying to win a World Series. They're just trying to make it into the playoffs. People don't respond to that, and now, are they ever going to be able to spend the money that the Mets can, or the Dodgers can, or the Padres have? Like, no, they're not. We're not in that size of market. So they've always had to rely on player development, on the Cardinals devil magic of finding older players or guys that that had careers elsewhere that come here and have a resurgence, and that hasn't happened recently. They're not turning these guys into productive players, and they've tried. They're in the middle of this, like, we've got a bunch of older guys, and then we got a bunch of really young guys, and it's not meshing. So it's yes, it would be nice to see a turnover in the offseason, but again, like, if they're not going to change the payroll all that much, which is not surprising, but are you going to roll into next year with all the pitchers you signed basically this year who are already older? Now they're even a year older. Like, are you going to roll that back again? Are you going to go young? Like, at a certain point, I think we've talked about it before, like, you almost want them to just say, hey, we're just going to go young for a year, bring up all these young kids. Yeah, we're probably going to struggle, but is that any worse than what we sat through last year?
Right.
With veterans? No.
That would at least be acceptable if they just said, hey,
You'd
guys,
understand it. Yeah.
we're going to rebuild, and it's going to be a little painful, but you're going to have a lot of youth to watch. So we're going to bring up all the kids. We're going to go 70-92. We're going to suck. But our young kids are going to get experience. They're going to see what it is. And next year, we'll go 500. And then the year after that, we're going to contend for a division. And then the year after that, we're going for the World Series. You give me that plan as a St. Louis fan, I can at least get behind it and respect it and say, okay, you guys got a 4-year plan. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go get it done. Like, I would trade Arenado this offseason for Bryce Miller to the Dodgers in a heartbeat. Like that. Boom. Done. Wouldn't even faze me. I'm not signing Goldschmidt. I can put Burleson at first base. I can call Walker up and put him at first base. I can throw Gorman back over to third, or I can put Walker over at third, where they're naturally positioned at.
Yeah.
I got Sajaci out there who's running around making plays left and right. Heck, Lucan Baker's not even the greatest ball player, but heck, I can put him at first base because he's slashing, crazy lines, and he's got over 1,100 OPS plus or whatever. OPS, I was looking at earlier. I can't remember which stat it was, but it's huge. And he's got 30 home runs in back-to-back years. Like, fine, give me that. Like, give me something to look for. But don't tell me, DeWitt, Mozeliak, don't tell me you're going for it and that you're not going to let us down and that just making the playoffs is not the acceptable line in St. Louis, and then 2 years in a row we don't make the playoffs because you guys don't want to bump the payroll. Like, I understand not wanting to go into luxury tax. I understand not wanting to have a $225 million payroll. Give me a $200 million payroll, but spend the money right, because this is the problem. The Cardinals go out and spend money on older players, but they don't spend the money on the right players.
Yeah.
They avoided a landmine not signing Jordan Montgomery. Obviously. Avoided another landmine not signing Quintana back. Good job. A great pickup for Fetty. I mean, let's be honest, the Cardinals did get the number one grade at the deadline for value. They gave up one player, got two back. It worked out. You gave up Edman, who you don't know what he's going to be. He hasn't played a game all year. You picked up a pitcher who was 7-4 on the worst team in the league with a 3.11 ERA. He had a really bad first outing in Chicago. Was tonight what we wanted to see, 5 innings? No, but he only allowed 1 run. He had a couple walks. He had a few strikeouts. Most importantly, he allowed 1 run. Okay. And you gave us, and you got rid of Dylan Carlson, who needed to be gotten rid of because he wasn't getting playing time. He wasn't developing. Mosaic said you had to pry him out of his cold, dead hands 2 years ago to get Juan Soto, and he didn't do it. And even I was with him on that because I didn't think Soto was worth it. At this point, obviously, I'm like, that was a mistake. I would have even taken Soto for 2 years. That would have been fine. It would have been exciting baseball to watch as we were losing. Helsley's getting on my last nerve right now. Speaking as he's got 2 men on with 2 outs, and it's no 2 count. He's trying to save a game, and he's 14 pitches in. But he makes every game exciting when he goes and closes now, doesn't he? I mean, he's always putting somebody on or giving up a hit.
Yeah.
But he's only had 3 blown saves, and Helsley just closed it out with a strikeout of Christopher Morel. The Cardinals do win 5-2 tonight against the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. That means they win the series. Tomorrow night they go for the sweep. So Fetty gets a win. Doesn't get a quality start, but he gets a win in his home appearance for the Cardinals. So another good game tonight for the Cardinals.
That can be a little bit of a shock too, though, when you come from a team that is so bad, and then all of a sudden now you're pitching in games that matter.
Right.
We all know how bad the White Sox are. Like they are historically terrible. It's
28,
you can. Yeah, I mean, you can say stuff and say, "Oh yeah," I mean, he had all these wins and he was good, but he's pitching in games that mean nothing, and so you are encouraged if he starts to throw well in games that do matter. So
And he's not a power pitcher. He's a placement guy. He's a little bit of a contact pitcher, but he's not like Michaelis or Palante. They're contact pitchers. His stuff will get hit, but it typically gets hit in the ground when it gets hit. And he does have some strikeouts. So, and we have Fetty under control next year too. So I expect next year to be a totally different ballgame. I expect our 1-2 punch to be Gray and Fetty. I do expect the Cardinals to go out and get another pitcher this offseason. I expect Michaelis to not be on the roster next year. I think they'll try to shed Mats in the offseason. I think this team is going to look very different. I don't think it's going to look very different in the way that we would like it to look, but I think we're going to see a lot of different names
too, right?
next year.
Wasn't he a 1-year guy, Gibson?
I think they pick up Gibson option. I think they let Lance Lynn go.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense.
I mean, the dude eats innings.
Yeah.
He has a bad inning, and he'll go out there and throw 6 scoreless.
Yeah.
Fine. At least he's not burning the bullpen.
Even Lance Lynn is who you thought he was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, a durable guy who's going to give up home runs, and he's going to, have games where he just doesn't have it. But, he's a prototypical 5-starter or, in a pinch number 4 guy. I mean, he's exactly what you thought. And I was more positive on the pitching moves that they made over the offseason than a lot of people were, because I'm like, okay, yeah, you're saying, oh, they're signing all these old guys. Okay, but they're not all going to age 50 years in one season. Like, this year they're still, they're 34. They're not signing these guys to 10-year contracts. Like, calm down, So I think their pitching's been relatively okay. I mean, Gray struggled recently, but if he can find it, and and now you got Fetty, and to me, Fetty is like Michaelis 2.0. Like he's the kind of that professional pitcher type guy, and I mean, I think they have some flexibility there. And you look at maybe the young guys, and they got a great start last week out of McGreevy, and maybe he's not next year. So excellent. They have some flexibility. I'm fairly encouraged by their young guys. I don't like to self-promote, as you know. I'm not a big talk about me guy. I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. However, I will claim credit because on this show several months ago, I previewed the entry draft. And I told you guys the guy to look out for that the Cardinals might be interested was a guy named J.J. Weatherholt from West Virginia, and you should all be watching him in the College World Series. And that's who the Cardinals wound up drafting. And and that's a guy who he's going to be here faster than you think. Like, he was by far the most pro-ready college baseball player I saw this year, by far.
Awesome.
So that's a guy that's going to go through the minor leagues pretty quickly, because they are not, hopefully they don't mess up his swing, because it was pretty darn good already in college. And so, and that's a guy that if they're already looking at it and saying, okay, he's your eventual second baseman. I guarantee when they drafted him, they're like, okay, our middle infield someday is going to be Weatherholt at second and Mason Wynn at short. Because Weatherholt was a shortstop who, got hurt and had hamstring injury. So he was limited in range, wound up playing some second. That's their middle infield of the future, and so I'm pretty positive on where they are from a positional standpoint, because sometimes you can have too many of these guys and you need to clear out kind of some of the, and yeah, are you going to make bad trades like Rosarena and, are you going to miss on some of these dudes? Of course. Right. But, eventually it's like, okay, you can go through that cycle, and yeah, they kept the wrong guys sometimes, but you hope that, just the sheer quantity of talent that they have in the minor leagues, they wind up getting enough guys to fill spots at the pros. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And like Josh was touching up on earlier, I would love to see if they came out and said, look, we're shipping everybody off. We're selling. We're going to bring all of our young guys up. We're going to see what the season brings for us. Like, that would be awesome to see. That would be awesome to hear and be like, okay, at least you have somewhat of a plan besides, let's just try to win the division, or let's try to make the playoffs. It's like, okay, we hear that all the time. It's like, it gets old after a while. But if they were to actually sit there and tell us their plan more precisely and correct, and not just giving us we're just going to do this, and then we're not going to raise the payroll, so that means we're not signing anybody. So it can mean a couple things. They're saying that they're not going to raise payroll. They could get rid of payroll, like as in Arenado, Goldschmidt, big time guys on the books, and then bring guys up to fill those positions, and then you're sitting on a bunch of money. So that tells me maybe later down in the season, somehow you're doing great, or whatever is going on, or maybe the next following season, or like you were saying, it's going to be, step by step. 1 year, we're going to go -20. Then next year we might win the division. Following year, deeper in the playoffs than possible World Series, stuff like that. I mean, it would be nice to see them come up, because then we could go to the games and support our young youth and be like, okay, this is what we have looking forward. This is what we have in our farm system. This is, all these guys are given a shot. I mean, that might give them a spark too. All the young guys on one team together, they all get called up, maybe guys that have been in the league maybe 1 or 2 years already, and then these guys are just coming up. Like, I mean, we've seen teams do it. Did they have big success? No. But I mean, that was different teams, and everybody's different. But like I said, I would hate to I hate to see like Goldie go, and of course Arenado go. Best corner duos in the league, best third baseman in the league, one of the best first basemen in the league if you talk power. Not this year, obviously, but I would hate to see them go. We were super excited when we got these guys. We're like, okay, these are going to be our cornerstone infielders on the corners, and they provide a bunch of power and a lot of pop, and they should be able to drive in 100+ RBIs easily every year. It sucked. It sucks. We had our opportunity, like we always said. We had our little window, our gap and window to win, so-called win and get there. And that's over. That was over last year, 2 years ago. But I would really look forward to seeing the young team come up here and just play for a season, see how it goes, maybe make a couple moves, maybe beef up our starting pitching. That way we can leave all the young guys for our offense. Who knows? But I look forward to next year already, even though this year's not over. I just want to see what we're going to do, just because this year has reminded us a lot of last year. Yes, there's been some changes and different kind of plays, different players, younger guys up. I know Ali Marmol's 2-year contract. I don't. Will he stay the full 2 years? I don't know. If they plan on, I guess let's see how the season ends with him. But front office likes him. A lot of the players, I guess, don't. Not don't hate him, but I mean, you can kind of see it.
The locker room's not against him from the reports I've heard. I heard the locker room is pretty much behind him.
I'm not saying they're not against him. It just, maybe it's hard to follow his kind of like his league or his lead and his demeanor on how he leads things, or some of his calls or decisions, something like that. I'm not saying they hate him at all, but like you said earlier, when he gets kicked out of the game, it brings a fire underneath him, and they play good. It's like, okay, the coach isn't there. Then they start really playing good. Like, is that something? Maybe not, but I'm just, playing devil's advocate.
Vengeance for Ollie.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, you put it like that, but yeah, I would really like to see.
I think one of the biggest issues still is the TV situation.
Oh yeah,
You know,
dude,
and it's
terrible.
really easy for us as fans to say spend more money, but I also understand that they have this giant question mark of, what is the TV revenue going to look like? So it obviously is impacting things, but and to me it's almost like, okay, if you have uncertain revenue for, let's say, the next year or 2 years, because you're trying to figure out what the heck's going on with Bally and that whole streaming situation, now's your chance to go young. Like if you already know that you're not going to have money, or you're going to be down on the ability to spend because of this, there's your built-in excuse to do it, right? Because there's been plenty of other clubs that you could look at, and say, okay, the Red Sox were really good for many, many, many years, and then they went young and they went bad for like 3 or 4 seasons, and here they came back again, right? So a lot of these bigger market clubs go through these cyclical things where they're good and then they're not so good. And this year the thing that's frustrating is I don't think the Brewers are winning the division as much as all the rest of the teams are losing it. You look at that Brewers team and they're not, I mean, yes, are they successful? Okay, yes, but I just don't see that. Like, are you going to pick them against any of the top teams in the National League this year to win the National League pennant? No, absolutely not. And so it's just, they happen to be in a division that's very flawed, with a super young Pirates team that's not quite ready, with a Reds team that's just kind of all over the place. They can look amazing one night and terrible the next. The Cardinals keep spinning their wheels. The Cubs are a disaster this season, which, okay, fine, hooray. But like, and then the Brewers are just kind of like the tortoise and the hare. They're just kind of just keep going in the same thing and, winning kind of the same percentage that they've done all year. And they're not blowing anybody's doors off. They're not running away with it. Like, as bad as the Cardinals are, what are they, still 6 games out? Like,
Yeah.
That's the thing that shows me that the Brewers are not this like uncatchable, great juggernaut. They're just a team that happens to have screwed up less than everybody else in the Central Division this year, which is frustrating because you look at it and you go, okay, well, we're not contending with a team that's loaded, like with the really talented team that's got, all kinds of offense and pitching. No, like, this is a very beatable team as far as the division goes. And that's why it's frustrating, because they have
very, very frustrating. Very frustrating. So I want to get wrapped up here in the next like 2 to 3 minutes, but I want to go through a list of our prospects real quick. I'm just gonna give you a few names. I want you. It's a thumbs up, thumbs down, or yay or nay, or who you're excited for, or who you've heard of. Tink Hintz. Yay or nay? All right, we got a yay for Tink Hintz. Quinn Matthews. Okay, I don't know.
Gladiator, like in between, because need to see more.
Yeah, I mean, he's in Double-A right now. He's projected to come and make a big league arrival in 2025. But he's 6'5" and he's 188 pounds. Dude needs to eat a cheeseburger and have a couple beers, or hit the weight room, I guess.
Yeah.
Victor Scott, we see him up with the big leagues right now. Thomas Jaycee, who I mentioned earlier, can't wait for him to get his call up. Are you guys excited to see him get some reps in the big leagues, or do you think he's just a minor league player?
He's disappointed this year, I think. I don't think he's progressed like they had hoped this season. And so I think they may have cooled on him a little bit based on what he's done this year. I'm not ready to kind of like cast him out or, kind of give up on him yet, but I think they are disappointed with what he's done so far this season. So
fair enough. Takeo Roby.
I think that was a guy who, when they got him, in the great sell-off of last year, was a guy that I was like, I don't really know where he fits, because I don't know if he's got enough pitches to be a starter, and I don't know if he's going to be one of these guys who's too limited as a starter, and then they're going to wind up making him a bullpen piece. So yeah, I would like to see what he does up here at some point, but I was kind of like undecided about him just because I don't know if he's versatile enough to start at this level. And if he's not, then okay, is he a future closer? Maybe. Does he throw that hard and not, hard enough to be a closer at this level? I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. I think he's a guy that I have to see how his stuff plays against major league hitters.
Fair enough. I am excited to see what he has because has been hype about him. I think he's got a cannon for an arm, if I recall correctly. I know Tink does. So I'm kind of excited for Roby to get up here. He's only in Double-A, so we probably got another 2 years. Chase Davis is still in High-A. He was our first-round draft pick last year. I'm kind of surprised he's not at least in Springfield at this point, but I expect him to be in Memphis next year because his projection is 2026 for the big club. Connor Jerpy, who was our first-round pick the previous season, left-handed pitcher. He's in Springfield right now. Anybody surprised we haven't seen or heard much about him yet?
You're talking about Cooper Yerpy?
Oh yeah, Cooper. I said Connor.
Yeah.
Cooper.
So he's for anybody who's not familiar with him, he's the guy with the super funky delivery.
Yep.
Which I saw him pitch at Oregon State and in college, and just kind of a wonky, very wonky delivery. And that's one of those things where they're going to shoehorn that guy as a lefty reliever just because of the way he throws, because of that goofy delivery.
Right.
And so when they drafted him, I'm like, well, okay, they're going to turn him into a lefty specialist. How often do you really get excited about lefty specialists? Not that often. Those guys are a dime a dozen. They move around, and so I think that guy's going to get shoehorned into that role because of his delivery. And so I'm not like, running out and beating the door down to see Cooper Yerpy pitch up here. So
I just want to see him like in person. I've seen some of his college clips, and yeah, he's got a really funky delivery. I want to see how it plays because we do know those guys with those weird deliveries for their first couple seasons in the bigs, they throw batters off because they're not used to seeing it and they don't get enough film of it and they don't prep for it enough. So I think he'd be great as like a seventh inning guy, especially if he's got some kind of gas or some good movement and location. Leonardo
the only thing about him though that makes me slightly more optimistic than I may have just sounded is the fact that he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Right. And most organizations are not going to burn a first-round pick on a guy that is going to be a very limited role type person. So maybe they still have faith, or maybe they are looking at him and saying, yeah, his funky delivery, there have been successful professional baseball pitchers with strange deliveries in the past, and you can even say that Chris Sale has kind of an odd delivery and there are guys like that have these kind of hitches or funky, funky ways of throwing. So maybe he's a guy that they look at it and are like, hey, this is a first rounder for a reason. So yeah, we'll see.
I don't know much about Leonardo Bernal. He's in High A. He's a catcher, 20 years old, so he's still a pup. Plenty of time to develop. We got to see a little bit of Gordon Graceffo earlier this year. Not horrible. Still needs some time to cook. We've already covered Sam Robersi before. Michael McGreevy. We brought him up just for a second earlier. We want to talk about this. Had his major league debut, went 7 innings. Wasn't a world beater by any means. It's not like it was Paul Skeens came out for us and struck out 12 guys, but he threw great clean ball. He looked good. He looked confident. He looked composed. I think he's ready. I think we see him a lot next year. I'm hoping not out of a bullpen position. I'm hoping we see him as the number 5 man in the rotation. Anybody else? No? Yay? Maybe? Argue me? Tell me I'm wrong?
He definitely deserves a chance to make the roster.
Yeah, there we go.
He's 24, just turned 24 in July. That's about the age that it's kind of like you either get it done or you're not going to, you're not like, right. Yes, you do wind up with some of these guys who get to the majors a little later, but 24, 25 is about where they need to be at the pro level and starting to contribute if they're going to be a productive major leaguer. So I definitely think he's on the major league roster next year. And I think he's given every chance to win a roster or a starting rotation spot. Like, they are going to have a young pitcher in the starting rotation next year, at least one, maybe two. Like they cannot go back into next year with, an older guys. And so, like all older guys. So I think he's going to be up at the top of the list of people that would potentially be on the starting rotation.
Yeah, I mean, we got to do something. We can't run it back with Matson, Michaelis, and Lynn. Like that's just not going to work. That's not a recipe for success or even to build on.
Nope.
So, I mean, I would much rather have a younger pitcher who's going to have some struggles, but who's mentally tough enough to understand, hey, I'm going against professional hitters.
Mm-hmm.
There's still stuff for me to learn, but I'm going to go out here and give them a run for their money. The one big disappointment I have, and I mean, this is a big disappointment because this guy was ranked in our top 7 last year for prospects, and now he's down at 28. Josh Baez. He was supposed to be this next great little outfielder we were going to have. He had all the tools. He's a 4 or 5 tool player. And now he is slumped all the way down to 28th in our top prospects. I thought maybe he got traded and I didn't realize it because I was scrolling. I couldn't find him. And then I got to the bottom. I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? So, and I did that right as we were coming on the show. So I don't have any information on what's happened to him. I'm going to have to go look that up. I'll bring you guys an update the next couple of weeks on why he's down so far. But that is my biggest disappointment because I thought maybe we would see him as a late season call-up this year or at least fighting for a spot on the bench coming out for next season. And Chris, unless you got some information on him that I don't have.
I do not.
That's kind of where I'm at on it. Jordan, you got anything else before we wrap up the show?
No, not really. Just I just want to see the Cardinals be successful. I just want to see them win. I just want to see them get to where they want to go, and I want to see them get back to where we want them to be, which is winning baseball, winning the division, making the playoffs, getting in there deep, upsetting some teams. And, I'm not saying, we need to win the World Series right now. Would it be nice to get there? Yeah. Would it be nice to make a surprise World Series run like the Blues did in 2019? Yeah, that'd be a crazy ride. But other than that, I want to see these young kids come up and I want to see them play. Like you were saying, some of these kids are 24, 25. They need to get up here and start contributing if they're going to be a St. Louis Cardinal in the near future. But I just hope we don't see the same thing next year from the front office. I hope it's a little bit different. They've been filling some needs that we have needed. Like you said, we received the highest praise at the trade deadline, stuff like that. But other than that, I mean, it's another season. It's not quite what we had last year, but it's right there. We're floating around 500, basically all freaking year. I just want to see our pitchers get going. And I know the season's not over, but I just want to see what the team looks like next year. I want to see who's here. I want to see who we get rid of. Hopefully we get the right price for people if we do trade, if we release people, I just would hate to see some of these guys go somewhere else and just start tearing it up, just like they're supposed to. And it's just like, like I said last week, what are we doing wrong that these guys can't play and perform like they're supposed to, or like they have in the past, where how we can identify them as that kind of player. But other than that, it's been rough to watch. There's been some exciting times with like I said, some of these young guys coming up and performing. Let's just see where the rest of the season goes. Like you said, we got like 50 games or something like that left, and we'll see where the season takes us.
Sounds good. Chris, can't thank you enough for coming on and joining us again, giving us, over an hour and a half of your time. Please give yourself a shout out, do some plugging real quick, and tell everybody where they can find you.
Just the website is stlsoccernews.com. It's just a compilation of basically as much stuff as I can put on there related to soccer in the St. Louis area. So we'll have all of the colleges getting ready to get started here. So all their schedules will be on there. All the podcasts, YouTube, content creators, all those links are there. A big expanded history section that we added this year. which kind of delves into the history of the game in the city of St. Louis. And we're just continuing to try to add to it and make it a resource for people, especially as we get closer to Christmas. There's a lot of local shops and stores that we have linked out there. So, different places that manufacture stuff. So, it's just a resource for people that are interested in soccer in the city. And then on X, social is just STL_soccer_news, where it's just me giving site updates and then random comments on city or what's going on in the world of St. Louis sports. So always great to talk to you guys. I always have a really fun time chatting with you, and I appreciate any time you guys want me on. I'm happy to do it. So
hey, you have an open invite anytime you want to come on. You're more than welcome to be here.
thank you.
For Jordan Melinda, for Chris Gebhardt, I'm Josh Edwards. This was the 314 Sports Show. We'll see y'all next week. 7th inning stretch tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Saturday showdown's coming. Next Left Turn will be back next week. Wrecked with Ranger on Saturday. Talking the Gridiron's coming back in full swing now. Variety Sports is putting out a lot of content, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you join us. Thanks so much. God bless you all and have a fantastic week.